Hey guys, Caleb here from CDBS Studios, and welcome back to the series where I am ranking the Ninjago Seasons in increasingly dumber ways in order to avoid actually telling you guys what I think about the Ninjago Seasons as a whole. So yeah, this is a series that I started last year by doing a video where I ranked the 21 Ninjago seasons based on their intros, which was a pretty fun video to make and a really nice time rewinding back to a TV show that I loved in my childhood and telling you guys what I thought about the intros. And today we are going to be doing a brand new criteria that's probably not super niche, but I still thought it would be fun to make regardless. We're going to be ranking the Ninjago seasons based on how they use the character of Jay Walker, the Blue Lightning Ninja. Jay has always been my favorite ninja in the Ninjago franchise. I just love him as he kind of, in more ways than any of the other ninja, was always a self-insert for me personally, as I always saw myself as the quippy jokester in any friend group I was ever a part of. So I just loved Jay for that reason. And so today I thought it would be really fun to rewind back on the Ninjago series, and I'm going to look at each of the 21 seasons, and I'm going to look at how they use the character of Jay. Now, I didn't want this ranking to become just a simple case of, oh, this season gave Jay more screen time than this season, so automatically this season has to go higher than this season. I didn't want to do that because that felt way too boring. So instead, what I looked at was specifically, how does each season use Jay? Does Jay get a prominent plot line during a season? Does he get something to do each season? Is the thing that he's given to do each season make sense? Or is it just thrown into the season because they needed something for Jay to do? And in the same vein, Jay might not have a lot of screen time in this season, but what does he do that season, and does it matter? That's kind of what I wanted to look at in this video. And so that is what I'm ranking today. Each season based on how they use the character of Jay. Now, how much runtime each season gives Jay, how each season uses him. And that is what we're looking at for today's ranking criteria. So, without further ado, let's jump into the list and rank the 21 Ninjago seasons based on how they use my favorite ninja in Ninjago, Jay Walker. Starting off our list at the very bottom, the season that uses Jay the worst is gonna go to Day of the Departed. So I mentioned this back when I made the intros ranking that Day of the Departed was supposed to be this kind of Halloween-y special for Ninjago, and it's this whole premise. The whole premise of this thing is that Sensei Yang brings back from the dead the former villains from the Ninjago series. And then the special puts each of the villains against a hero, one of the ninja, in order to fight them. And if they kill them, they'll take their place in the living world. A pretty standard kind of idea for a run. And so each of the villains does actually get paired up with the hero that they have the most connection to. They paired General Cryptor up with Zane. They put Moro against Wu. And they put Chen up against Nia and Kai. All of those make sense. But then Jay gets to fight Samukai. Probably the one villain that he has zero connection to whatsoever. Because, I mean, when you look at the Ninjago franchise, there's only one villain that had existed up before Day of the Departed that Jay had any connection to. But unfortunately, we can't use that villain in this special because according to the Ninjago lore, Jay makes a wish that undoes that villain's entire existence in the world. So therefore, there's no way to bring him back for the special because nobody even knows who he is. So instead, Jay gets to fight the boring cookie cutter antagonist from the pilots of the show. That just feels the most forced out of all of them. Where like, I honestly can feel the writers writing this special and being like, oh no, we need a villain to put Jay against. He'll just go against Samukai. Why not? Because he's like the only other villain that Jay, I guess, could go up against that wouldn't be too overpowered, I guess. and it just feels the most forced out of any of the ninjas pairings in this special. And then also the show kind of also tries to make out the point that Jay is also one of the ninja for getting Cole, which I guess is supposed to be part of the special and the lore and that. But to be honest, it's stated multiple times throughout the show that Cole is supposed to be Jay's best friend. So like him forgetting Cole feels kind of forced. Everything they do with Jay in Day of the Departed feels forced because there honestly should be no reason he's facing Samukai of all villains, and him forgetting Cole feels very much like, oh, the writers need a reason to get Cole by himself with Yang. So yeah, Day of the Departed I think has to go with the bottom slot for the worst use of Jay, but thankfully we can only go up from here. Next up, we have Master of the Mountain, Season 13. Yeah, I didn't even realize that when I made this video, but apparently when you make a season based on or having the main character of Cole, Jay just gets nothing to do. Like, I don't know why that's a trend, because the two Cole-centric seasons are here at the bottom of the list. So, anyway, that's saving that for a later video, but this Master of the Mountain does have some occasional moments, but this is definitely one of the seasons where you can attribute to the fact that Jay is just there. He doesn't really get anything to do. The only real presence he has throughout the entire season is that during the middle chunk of this season, after the ninja gets separated, Jay, Lloyd, and Nia end up going to the Months and their kind of tribe. And when they meet the Months Queen falls in love with Jay. So the show then repeats a very controversial plot line that we're going to get into later in this video. But we now have a couple episode love triangle between Nia, the Months Queen, and Jay, when it's very, very clear that Jay has no feelings for the Months Queen whatsoever. So I don't know why the show is trying to force Jay into this love triangle, but it's basically this love triangle is the only thing they put Jay into this entire time, because other than that, I mean, he fights with the ninja through the rest of the season, but like his main presence in this season is to be part of a love triangle for a couple episodes there in the middle, and then that's all he gets. So I can't really put this season any higher because Jay technically gets one very forced plot line that's his only presence in this season. So I can't put Master of the Mountain any higher, but I mean, at least it does feel like Jay had something to do that didn't feel 100% forced, and like the writers had nothing to do for this character. So at least it beats Day of the Departed, but let's be honest, it's not going any higher than this. I'm sorry, guys. Next up, we have Secrets of Forbidden Spinjitzu, aka Season 11. And the Wild Brain era, especially for Jay, was a very rough era because Jay, as a character, was always written to be comic relief. He is the ninja who cracks jokes and is kind of the character that's supposed to insert the comedy into the episodes in the earlier seasons of Ninjago. But then, when Ninjago rebranded and rebooted in the Wild Brain era to just Ninjago and ditched the Masters of Spinjitzu thing, they kind of brought all of the ninja down and made them more childlike, where they're now all cracking jokes. They're all acting way more like teenagers than they used to be. And as a result, Jay kind of loses the main thing he gets to do in the show, which is his comedy, which it's not as egregious in the later seasons of the Wild Brain era, but for this season especially, it was very, very bad. Jay has very little to do because his whole comedy kind of doesn't get to shine anymore because all of the ninja are kind of acting like the way Jay usually acts. Although it does lead to a very top tier joke, and if you guys don't know what that joke is, then you need to go rewatch the show because you'll know it when you see it. It's a really good joke. Other than that, Jay does get to have a couple things, mainly during the fire chapter. Jay's only real prominent thing, apart from just being there with the ninja, is he gets this gag about reading Clutch Powers' exploring book and just using it in every way possible to try to get them out of this pyramid, which is just a one episode kind of thing. And then the ninja gets banished to the Never Realm for the back half of the season, and Jay just kind of doesn't get anything to do in this realm because pretty much every other ninja has something to do except him, which is just, man, they just brought him along for the journey because he's one of the main ninja. This is one of the most egregious seasons for that reason. But I can at least say, again, they don't force Jay in anything he doesn't belong in, so at least it can beat some of the seasons that are below it. But there's also not enough here in this season to warrant it going any higher. So unfortunately, Secret Forbidden Spinjitzu has to take this spot right here on the list. Next up, we've got The Island, and this is one of the cases in the show where I think they had such an obvious plot line to stick Jay into, and then they didn't. I mean, I get that this kind of is less of a fault on The Island and more or less on the fact that this is like 4 episodes and really shouldn't be considered its own season, but like we consider March of the Oni its own season, so that's why I'm counting The Island separate. But the island, as it stands, has this really interesting plot line of the ninja going to this island and discovering this tribe that worships lightning. But then, and that feels like so obvious, like, oh, Jay, let's make Jay the person they worship, like C-3PO being worshipped by the Ewoks or something. That could be a really fun plot line. But instead, they do nothing with that, and Jay just becomes a sacrifice that they send out to Wohira. But then they just use Jay then as the vehicle to figure out, oh, Ronan is scamming these island people. Which also, don't get me into how much I hate that they did that to Ronan. But this just feels like the one time in the show where they had such an obvious plot line to stick Jay into. Maybe the island tribe can start worshiping him as a god, or they can have some kind of fun idea plot line with that, where maybe Jay has to find a way to free the ninja while not giving up his cover because they think he's a god or something. And then they could have done the sacrifice. But as it stands, the sacrifice is just kind of wasted, which is sad because I feel like they had such a good idea here for a plot line and a premise for Jay, but then they just didn't do it, which I think is more frustrating in a way. So fortunately, I can't put the season any higher, but at the same time, again, there is stuff for Jay to do, so it can't go any lower than it is right now. Next up, we have Rebooted Season 3. Now, the season actually starts off pretty decently for its use for Jay. Of course, we see that Jay is a teacher alongside the other ninja in the first episode, and then he participates in the preceding hack attack where they're fighting all the droids in Ninjago City. That is very, very nice. They do a really good job with Jay in these early episodes. And then we get to episode 2 and the rest of the season, and then comes the scene where they put Jay into a plot line that is so forced that I'm pretty sure no Ninjago fan I've ever met actually likes. And that is, of course, the stupid love triangle between him, Nia, and Cole. This, more than any other plot line in the whole show, feels like the writers had no idea what to do with Jay in season 3. So they just stuck him in this stupid love triangle that he does not belong in, because the whole premise of this love triangle is that, of course, we've been setting up for 2 seasons now that Jay and Nia like each other and are set up to be a romantic pairing. And then for some random reason, we're going to have Nia step on this machine that analyzes your perfect match, and it's going to say that it's Cole. So now Nia's having conflicting feelings about Jay or Cole, when it's very clear that Cole does not reciprocate those feelings in any way possible. So Jay and Cole fighting over Nia for half the season literally has no stakes whatsoever because Cole doesn't even like her. And it's like, what are we doing here? Why? This is one of the plot lines that drives me crazy, and I hate it so much. Other than the stupid love triangle, though, when we get to the back half of the season, we do get more Jay things that are better because they are detached from the stupid love triangle. Things like we have when we go to the Digiverse and space, Jay gets to fare the best in both of those and kind of teach the other ninja the lessons of those episodes, which I kind of liked. And of course, this is the season where Jay finally gets his elemental power, so there is good stuff for Jay this season. Unfortunately, the love triangle drags the season so much through the mud because this is by far one of the worst plot lines in the whole show. And keep in mind, going forward, this plot line goes on for like 4 seasons. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the stupid love triangle for a while. But thankfully, this season is the worst of the love triangle. So it gets to be the last bottom of those seasons. But at the same time, it's just, apart from that love triangle, Jay doesn't get much else to do, so I can't warrant putting this season any higher, unfortunately. I I hate that love triangle so much. Next up, we've got Tournament of Elements Season 4, and Jay's main role in Tournament of Elements is, of course, carrying over the stupid love triangle from Season 3. Thank you, show, for carrying this on. Thankfully, again, it's not super egregious in this season like it was in the last, because we see in the first episode the ninja are broken up because of Zane's death, and Jay is not faring super well, and his main reason for not wanting to come back is he doesn't like Cole because of the love triangle thing. And then he goes in as part of the tournament, and he doesn't get a lot to do because him and Cole mainly just fight like outside of the tournament, and then they get paired up with each other. And thankfully during this fight is when they finally talk through their differences, and we finally kind of retire the love triangle, which is like, thank you, show, for retiring that, because it is such a bad plot line. So thankfully it's gone. But after that fight happens, Jay really doesn't get a lot to do, because you have every other ninja gets something to do. As you have Cole and Zane, we follow them down in the factory. Lloyd gets to have his plotline by discovering Chen's past with the Garmadon. Kai has his plotline with Skylar. So what is Jay left to do? He's kind of doesn't get anything, to be honest. I mean, and they even do try to bring back some of the natural comedy of the character, where he gets his leg broken for some reason, and it's literally just led to make him just have humor when he's in the next episode just walking around and he's like grunting because of his leg, and it's like, that's not funny, really. And I literally can't figure out why they even have his leg get broken. Like, there's no, like, you literally could have done this episode without Jay having his leg get broken and nothing really changes. Like, I don't understand why the writers did that. So Tournament of Elements unfortunately can't go very high, because the real only thing Jay gets to do during this season is retire the love triangle, which I've mentioned I hate the love triangle, so I think I can only put this season slightly above Rebooted, because it's basically the exact same thing as Rebooted, where love triangle is his main plot line. They sprinkled in some other stuff, but other than that, this season can't go higher, because I think the love triangle is better here because it's less prominent as it was in season 3. But whatever, Tournament of Elements goes here, it's fine. But let's just move on from this, because honestly, I hate the love triangle. Let's just be done talking about it. Man, I hate this plot line. Ugh. Alrighty, next up, we've got Dragons Rising Season 1. And this is probably the one season I had the hardest time figuring out where to place on this list, because Jay is only in like a minute of one episode. Yeah. He is in one episode where the ninja are at the administration, and Jay just walks through a door, and he just has a slight 1-minute cameo before disappearing into the aether completely. Other than that, we get a couple fleeting references to him here and there through the ninja, wondering where he is. We get to see a picture of him at the crossroads, but basically, this season doesn't do anything with Jay, which is made it kind of difficult to place, because you would inherently think, oh, this season does nothing with Jay, so I have to rank it at the bottom. But then I started to think about it more, and like I mentioned, I didn't want this video to become a look at, oh, this season gave Jay more runtime and screen time than this season, so it has to rank higher inherently. Because if we're going on that road, then Dragon's Rising Season 1 has to be last place, because Jay doesn't have any runtime. But then I thought about it, and this season is more or less using Jay very sparingly, because they're setting him up to do other things. And now that we have the later seasons of Dragons Rising to see what the writers were gonna do with Jay moving forward, I think I like the fact that he's kept hidden from this season, as it really starts to sow the seeds in your mind that, oh, Jay is apart from the ninja, his memories are lost. What is going to happen to him now that he doesn't even know who he is and that he's a ninja? That's a really interesting idea. And now that I've thought about it more, and I now see where the show is taking that plot line, I actually like this season and how little it uses Jay. Like I mentioned, this ranking is not about which season gives Jay more screen time, it's about the use of him. And this season uses Jay very sparingly on purpose to set you up for the later things that Jay is gonna do. and I like that a lot more now. So this season does deserve to rank above the seasons. I do have significant problems with the plot lines they stick Jay in. But much like I mentioned, I did mention I didn't want this video to be a look at, oh, this season has more run time for Jay, so it has to rank higher. But inherently, when you give Jay more screen time, you do also get to do more with the character each season. So I don't think I can rank this season any higher, even though I do now appreciate the sparing use of Jay. Unfortunately, I just can't put this one any higher. Following in Season's 1's footsteps, I next have Dragon's Rise in Season 2, which suffers from a lot of the original criticisms I did still have with Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, where this season is very limited again on its use of Jay, as Jay is basically missing from the entire first half of the season, and then when we get to the Tournament of Sources, we find out that Roz has actually recruited Jay onto his team and has kind of manipulated his lack of memories into thinking the ninja are evil, which I do think is a very interesting plotline, but again, it's not like this is the first time we've had an evil version of one of the ninjas, so it's not super original, I guess. And then the show puts Nia up against Jay, and Jay using like the secret techniques of Shatterspin and shattering his goodness and all that to fight Nia. But then he loses his round in the tournament, and then he just straight up leaves, which is kind of used in a sense to set up this idea of, oh, it's kind of meant to throw the ninja off because Nia wants to go after Jay, but by doing so, she forfeits the tournament. But, it's kind of used as a mini source of that. But so originally I had this season a lot lower on the list alongside Dragon's Rise in Season 1, but I then decided that this season, much like Dragon's Rise in Season 1, is still setting up things to come for Jay. And now that I know where we went with those ideas, I now appreciate this season a lot more. As this season, much like Season 1, it's not about how much screen time you give Jay, it's how much you use him. And this season uses him to a great degree, setting up the little seeds in your mind of, okay, we already know that he didn't have his memories back and the team wants to find him. Okay, we found him now, but Roz has now manipulated his mind by making him think the ninja are evil and by shattering Jay's goodness. So there's now seeds in your mind now set of, oh, can we even save Jay at this point? Which I like. And then we send him off into the next season. So I actually much like this season a lot more, and I kind of inherently, due to the fact they do more with Jay in the season, I did have to put it slightly above Dragon's Rise in Season 1, but I like these seasons as they're more setup seasons for the later stuff they did with Jay, but as it stands, I can't really put this seasons any higher because the later seasons on the list do use Jay more because they gave him more screen time, and I said I didn't want that to be the crux for how this video was set up, but like I mentioned, inherently when you give a character more screen time, you're able to do more with that character, so I think inherently those seasons do have to go above this season, unfortunately, so sorry. Alrighty, next up, we've got Crystallize, Season 16. So, this season has some very interesting ideas for what it wants to do with Jay, as in the first couple episodes, we see that Jay is depressed after Nia's kind of pseudo-sacrifice death in the previous season, but in fairness, every ninja is grieving in these early episodes, so, that's not really too much of a compliment for Jay, so I can't really give points to him for that, but I do think that Jay being depressed especially works well because he's supposed to be Nia's kind of boyfriend slash, husband in a way, so, I mean, it makes sense, so that works, and he works to bring Nia back. This season also leaned very heavily into Jay having a rivalry with Fuji Dove, which I've never really been super fan of because this is more or less just the show trying to create comedy gags where we have this unknown supervillain who thinks that Jay is his arch rival, and believe me, by season 16 that joke does get old very quickly. But then once we get into the back half of the season, once the Crystal Council starts causing havoc, they actually do pair Jay and Nia up, which I do like, as we kind of get to have this fun little reverse arc that we had back in the early seasons where Nia's powers are kind of on the fritz due to her getting her powers sucked out of her to come back after her sacrifice. So we get to see Jay kind of hype her up and kind of prop her up, and it's very nice to see. And then of course we have the final battle where Jay unlocks dragon form, which is pretty cool, but overall, this season doesn't do a ton with his character that's like interesting. They do some really cool things, and I do like his pairings with Nia, but at its core, this season doesn't give Jay some epic big plot line that he gets to have across the season. It's more or less just, oh, he's paired up with Nia because of, reasons. So, anyway, Crystallize is fine of its use of Jay. It doesn't really do anything that it's egregious that makes me hate the season like I do with other seasons we've talked about, but at the same time, it doesn't do anything incredible that makes it stand out. So I don't think it can go any higher, unfortunately. Next up, we have Hunted, Season 9, and this season does use Jay in very interesting ways, as he is now in the first realm, with the rest of the ninja, helping train the now child Wu as he slowly starts to grow up. And there was a very nice scenes as you kind of get to see a lot more of the ninja's backstory this season, and you get to see a lot more about Jay in some of the episodes, like him coming up with the plan to create the robotic firstborn in order to get the ninja free, which I really like, kind of tying back to Jay's inventor personality that kind of has taken a hiatus in the show. So I like that a lot. I do think it's kind of funny how Jay kind of has a mental breakdown for the first few episodes. And then after we get out of the Dragon Hunter camp, Jay kind of falls off, unfortunately, in terms of relevance, as he doesn't get a lot to do, as after they escape the camp, we focus a lot more on Faith and Wu's backstory, and Cole gets a lot more to do. So unfortunately, Jay kind of doesn't get a ton to do apart from just being one of the ninja who's unfortunately stuck there. And then when we make it back to Ninjago at the end of the season, Jay does get to help defeat the Colossus, which I like. But other than that, Jay doesn't get a lot to do in the later episodes of Hunted, but the early episodes do a lot for his character that do elevate the season pretty decently high. So I have had to rank this one pretty high, but unfortunately, he doesn't get a lot to do after that, so I can't put the season any higher than where it is right now. But I will say that the season did a pretty decent job about giving Jay something to do at least, and making it necessary for why he's stuck with Little Wu instead of just being back in Ninjago with the others. So anyway, I like this season for what it's worth with Jay, but to be honest, this season could have done a lot better. If they gave him more to do after they escaped the Dragon Camp, then the Hunter Camp, then maybe this season could have propelled higher, but as it stands right now, I think this is pretty nice right in the middle of the list, so that feels right for the season. Next up, we've got Sons of Garmadon, Season 8, and I found out really interestingly that this season more or less used Jay as a vehicle to deposit exposition during this season, as he and Cole are the ones that are the exposition about why the ninjas' designs have changed, which is kind of interesting why they gave that to Jay of all characters. And then Jay is the one that ends up going with Lloyd to the tea shop to learn about the tale of Oni and Dragon. Jay is the one that figures out that Wu is the baby that they've been protecting. So this season does a lot to basically use Jay as exposition, which is not my favorite role they've ever given Jay, so middle of the list feels about right. But at the same time, it's at least something for the dude to do, so at least it can rank higher than the seasons that doesn't do anything with him. Other than that, they do some great things, like of course he fights with the ninja in the final episodes and is the one who arrests Kilo, which I think is fun. And he gets stuck in the first realm alongside the other ninja at the end of the season. But as it stands, this season doesn't do anything amazing with Jay. It's basically just, oh, we needed a character to hear the exposition or deposit the exposition to the viewer. So Jay is the character we're going to decide to do it through, which I don't hate, but at the same time, there are seasons that use Jay a lot better. So I can't give it any higher marks, unfortunately. Sorry. Next up, we have Legacy of the Green Ninja Season 2. And this season, once again, is another case where we kind of have a lot of flip-flops, where Jay gets not much to do in the first half of the season, and then he gets a lot to do in the back half. So the first half of the season, which is probably the most divisive couple episodes in the whole Ninjago fandom, you either love them or hate them. It's the filler arc where Garmadon's using the mega weapon against the ninja, basically doing a monster of the week type stories for a couple episodes. And apart from Evil Jay, not much happens in this. Like during Double Trouble, Jay and this evil version of Jay have this kind of clash by having that. But other than that, nothing really of note here. Jay doesn't really do much except just being a ninja here. He's still a comic relief character, like I've mentioned before. And then when we make it to the Dark Island, Jay gets a lot more presence in the plot, as We get to have a lot more quips from him that I kind of like. He is the ninja who finds the Temple of Light, so that's pretty prominent. And then, of course, they do a really fun thing for the final battle where they actually have the Overlord and Garmadon capture Nia and turn her evil. So Jay has some kind of motivation and presence in the final battle, which I really like. So Jay gets a lot more to do in the back half of this season, thankfully. But other than that, this is another one of those seasons where, like, if Jay got a lot more to do spread across the show of the season, then maybe this could have shot up a few more slots. But either way, this is a pretty decent season for the use of Jay. But I just wish they did a little more with him, so I can't put the season any higher, unfortunately. But it's still a decent season, so I have to give it props for that. Next up, we have Seabound, Season 15, and this season has a lot of things they do for Crystallize. Like, I'm not gonna lie, rewatching this, I found that a lot of the things they did for Jay and Nia and Crystallize is very similar to what they did in this season, as this is the season that focuses on Nia, her powers are acting up, and all of that. And so Jay is kind of the ninja again that's comforting her, helping her figure out her powers. He goes on the exploration team with them, and it's pretty nice that they use Jay once again as kind of this character who hypes up Nia, which I kind of like. And they also do a thing where Jay almost dies in this season, which is also kind of the push that Nia needs to make the sacrifice that turns her into pure water so that she can save him and also defeat the villain, of course. And then the season ends with Jay having a promise to go find Nia, which is pretty nice, which does get paid off and crystallized. But so this is a pretty decent season for the use of Jay, using him as kind of a hype man for Nia. But at the same time, if you remove Nia from the season entirely, Jay gets nothing to do. So unfortunately, I can't put this one any higher. But I will say I do like him as a hype man for Nia, so that's why this season has to go high. But at the same time, if he got more to do outside of just being Nia's hype man, this could have easily shot up a few more spots. But on the other hand, Seabound is at number 9. I think it's a decent season for the use of Jay, but I do kind of want a little more out of him, unfortunately. Alrighty, next up, we come to the pilots and Jay's use in them. And during the first episode, the use of Jay is kind of limited, as he really doesn't show up until Kai's final test at the very end of the episode to eventually become the lightning ninja at the end of it, which I kind of like. And then he's, of course, part of the ninja's team to go after the golden weapons, but that was pretty much expected. The things that Jay does get to do prominently is he's, of course, the first ninja to learn Spinjitzu, so he's kind of the first character we ever get to see doing the art in the show that's called Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu. So it's just kind of fun that Jay gets to be the first ninja who does it. So I've always loved that. And of course, he's the ninja that suggests they do the Tornado of Creation in the final episode. So that's always nice. Yeah, the pilots are kind of spared in their use of Jay, as they don't do a ton with him. He's just the same quippy comic relief character he's always been. And he does get a few great moments of exposition by learning Spinjitzu and Tornado of Creation. But at its core, the pilots don't do much else with him, so I can't really put him too much higher, because unfortunately, again, he's like the one ninja they speed run through getting his golden weapon, so he doesn't get a lot of screen time for his golden weapon, much like the rest of the ninja do, so it can't really go any higher, unfortunately. Hands of Time is another season that's very interesting when it came to its use of Jay, because he's part of the initial battle with the Chronics, he's part of the initial battle of the Chronics at the beginning of the season. And then when we fast forward to the later episodes of the season, Jay kind of gets sidetracked a lot during these episodes, where we have the ninja going to the amusement park to try to stop the snakes from stealing metal. And then Jay's like, oh wait, the junkyard is going to be a target too, but doesn't tell the rest of the ninja this. So he speeds off to the junkyard by himself to go help his parents, which is like, I feel like you should tell the ninja that, and maybe half of them could go with you or something, and that could have been interesting. And then this does also lead to him getting a pretty cool bike, which I do really like the look of, and it's one of my favorite vehicles on the show. So, you know what, I might be biased in that. And then, of course, we have in the later episodes, Jay is actually one of the ones that infiltrates the Chronics and Crux's little base, and he's the one who helps Borg try to put in the secret code into the Iron Doom so that they can't use it, which I like. But then, unfortunately, he doesn't get to be part of the final battle because he doesn't time travel with Kai, Nia, and Wu. So, unfortunately, he doesn't get to do a lot in the last episode besides just make constant jokes about, oh, who the new Samurai X is and stuff, which is not really great. But I will admit that he gets a lot of focus in the season, especially being one of the ninja who infiltrates the base. And he gets a lot of side gags with with Cole, Karloff, and Lloyd. So, you know what? I'm pretty okay with Jay this season. He has decent things to do, but unfortunately, I do kind of want just a little more out of him, so I can't put it into the top 5. But I will say it's a decent season. It's pretty fun, but unfortunately can't go any higher. Next up, we've got Possession, and once again, this is a season where Jay gets very little to do, but the things he does do are pretty decent. First off, they have the whole premise of this season that Jay loses his powers in the first episode, which I think is really fun as we kind of get to knock the ninja down a couple of pegs after the ninja kind of relied on their powers for season 4. It's kind of nice to see them taken back and kind of figuring out how they're supposed to get by without their elements, which is really cool. And then they have the whole premise of this season of after Lloyd disappears and gets possessed, that the ninja try to lead in different cases, and Jay gets his chance to lead in Sticks and Stones. But unlike the other ninja who get decent amounts of an episodes to lead, Jay gets like a quarter of an episode because he only really leads for the ending battle at the end, where they're trying to infiltrate Ronan's shop and then they fight Moro briefly. Well, where like other ninja who take on the leadership role get like at least half of an episode to lead, and Jay maybe gets 5 minutes, which is kind of unfortunate. He then gets a pretty fun side gag where he gets to fix Zane but doesn't really fix him, which I think is kind of funny, and it does lead to one of my favorite gags on the show, which is Pirate Zane, which is pretty funny. And then, of course, you get the vision in the first Ninjutsu Master's tomb with Jay with Nia, which does lead into later seasons, so that's at least nice that the show thought about its future a little bit here. And then, of course, when we get to the final battle, Jay also gets a really cool car. I don't know why, but I just love the vehicles Jay gets in this show because I just think that car is so cool and I want it. But other than that, Jay doesn't get much else to do. I do think the season does have more spread out uses of Jay, which I think is why I prefer this season to some of the others we've talked about, where it feels sometimes like the show is very lopsided of, oh, we don't have anything to do with Jay for the first half of the season, but we have something for the later half, so that's good. But this season spreads out its use of Jay, so it's a lot feeling like they actually have ideas for what to do with Jay instead of just constricting it to 1 or 2 episodes. But so I like his use in Possession, but again, he doesn't get like a prominent plot line to be a part of, so I can't put it any higher or in the top 5. But I will say there's a lot of enjoyment from Jay in Possession, but I do kind of want a little bit more, unfortunately. Bringing us into the top 5 actually brings us to the seasons where Jay does in fact get official plot lines, which is why they have to rank higher than the rest of the seasons, unfortunately. And we start this list off with March of the Oni, season 10. And Jay doesn't get a lot to do over the course of this 4-episode arc. But the main thing he does with this season is he has the yin and yang plot line with Nia, which is more than I can say for most of the rest of the show, where Jay doesn't get like squat to do except for a couple things. So him getting a plot line where he has the traditional plot line you see in some shows where it's like Jay wants to propose to Nia, but like he has fear about doing it. He keeps working with Cole and Kai to try to work up the courage for it. And then he finally does in the episode at the very end, and they have the classic joke of, I don't think this is the right time. It's fine for what it is, but it's at least something for Jay to do across the 4 episodes of March of the Oni. So it at least has to get props for that because they at least found something for Jay to do in these 4 episodes. But other than that, Jay doesn't get much. Jay doesn't have anything outside of that plotline besides just fighting alongside the ninja. But other than that, it's a fine little plotline for Jay to be a part of. I think it's fine, but at the same time, I wish he did more outside of that plotline, so it can't go any higher than number 5. But at least it is a plot line, so I do have to rank it above pretty much every other season, unfortunately. So, yeah. Next up, we have Rise of the Snakes, Season 1. And yeah, of course, this isn't a season where, of course, being one of the first seasons, they did a lot with Jay's focus across the season, where, of course, they still have him be the heavy comic relief. This is a season where he is very heavy on the comic relief more than anything because that's the way he's written, and this is also long before they've introduced the idea that every ninja can make jokes, which they still have the other ninja make jokes, but Jay is the one heavily delivering the comic relief this season. Jay gets specifically 2 episodes that focus on him heavily, which is Snakebite and Once Bitten, Twice Shy, which are both episodes heavily focused on Jay, and I do really like his arcs across those episodes. Conveniently, both of those episodes are ones that feature the Fangpire biting someone and them turning into a snake, both of which being about Jay's family, which is like, okay, very interesting that that's what they went for with Jay's character, but I do still like it. It's fun, and Jay does at least get a lot of really prominent stuff to do across Rise of the Snakes, and it is really nice to see him in this season. And there's pretty much not much else to mention. Am I missing anything? Oh yeah, Jay uses wind in one episode. Yeah, I don't know how he does that, but whatever. Yeah, Rise of the Snakes is pretty alright with his use of Jay, but unfortunately I do kind of have 3 seasons that unfortunately kind of were predestined to be number 1, or number 3, 2, and 1, so unfortunately Rise of the Snakes can't etch into the top 3, but it unfortunately is pretty good. I mean, yeah, I didn't intend to set out to do this when I made this list initially, but there's really only 3 seasons that really prominently use Jay almost like he's a main character. So they have to rank inherently just top 1, 2, 3. And the first of these is gonna go to Dragons Rising Season 3. Oh my, the use of Jay in Dragons Rising Season 3 is the best Jay has been in years of this show. The Wild Brain era really did a problem with Jay with, like I mentioned, because they dumbed down every ninja and made them all more childlike. Jay's inherent comic relief didn't really work anymore as his primary running gag. But now, in Dragons Rising Season 3, it's so much better. We have a great arc set up across the first 2 seasons of Dragons Rising where Jay doesn't have his memories, he doesn't know who he is or where he comes from. Roz then takes advantage of that to infiltrate Jay's mind, corrupt him into this bitter person who shatters his goodness. And then we make it to Dragons Rising Season 3, where Jay is set up to be a bounty hunter, which is a very interesting role for him. And then eventually the ninja find him, and they hire him to help them with find Aaron's parents. And we get to slowly see this breakdown of Jay, where he constantly keeps insisting he's not a ninja, and he doesn't want to be, which is so shattering for the audience and the characters themselves. But you kind of, in a way, understand what Jay is going through. He doesn't have his goodness anymore. He has no memory of who the ninja are at all. And it's so shattering to the characters. And I love that. And the thing that I love that they also do is they don't outright redeem him. It doesn't just become a classic plotline of, oh, at the very end, Jay gets his memories back, or he just comes back as a hero because he's supposed to be a hero of the franchise, so we have to make him a hero again. They only like half redeem him, where in the final battle, when Nia and Kai are swamped, Jay shows up to help them, and it's not because he wants to be a ninja. He just doesn't want to be a terrible person anymore. And when he's with the ninja, he doesn't feel like a terrible person. And that is so much better than anything else they've done with Jay in forever in the show, because I love that idea of a plotline of taking this character who we haven't used much up to this point, having him basically become this person who has no goodness left in him, no memories of the man he was, but he slowly gets broken down from this bitter bounty hunter back into a semi-redeemable hero, which I love. And I swear, Dragons Rising better keep up this writing for Jay when they make Season 4, because my, if they break down everything I love about Jay in Season 3 of this show, I'm going to be so mad, because this is the best Jay has been in years in Ninjago. So you know what? Dragons Rising Season 3 has to go at number 3, because man, it is just so good in its use of Jay, and I can't, and there's no notes here when it comes to his arc, because it's so good. I cannot admit that this season does it good. But again, there's 2 seasons that are just a little bit better. I mean, yeah, there was only real 2 seasons that could have ranked in the number 1 and number 2 slot, because Ninjago kind of has this premise where they try to focus each season on one of the ninja, and unfortunately the 2 seasons that make Jay the main protagonist have to rank in the high 2 spots. It just was kind of predestined. And the first one of these is Prime Empire, Season 12. Inherently, you look at this season and you think, oh, Jay is not, like, Jay, I don't know why Jay is the protagonist of this season. It's a season where the ninja go into a video game and it becomes their whole thing, which we've seen before. Jay fares well in a video game back in season 3, so it's not inherently unjustified that Jay is great inside the video game. He gets some interesting stuff about the League of Jay. He gets to have a dance battle with Nia, and you start to really kind of think like, wait a second, why is Jay the focus of this season? All of the ninja play video games from what we've seen across the show. Why is it him that's the hero? And then you figure out the villain's backstory, and you suddenly realize Jay is the only ninja they could have chosen as the lead character. This season introduces us to the villain Unagami, the literal physical embodiment of the game itself, who feels regret and anger at the fact that they were abandoned by their creator. And all they want to do is create a portal to the living world so that they can find their creator and ask them why they were abandoned. And then you remember Jay's arc. Jay is an orphan, given up by his parents to live in a junkyard. And from what we've seen in some scenes across the show, this is in a way what Jay wants. He originally wanted to find his parents and ask them why they gave him up to the junkyard. But much like Unagami, they give up this idea that they were abandoned for no reason. There was a reason, and it's not their fault, which I just love. And once you figure out that that's what the villain's arc is, it makes so much sense why Jay is the main character this season, because that is such a great way to use a ninja to connect to a villain. And man, it's so effective. I've previously had problems with this season for having its final battle be less of a final battle and more of like a talking debate. But now that I've gotten a little bit more accustomed to that being a norm in some shows, and seen now that Jay is the one they chose, man, I appreciate this use of Jay so much more than I used to, because man, it is worth it. And having Jay as the main ninja makes so much sense now for this season. In the last episode, it all comes together. And this is just proof that you can do a lot with the character while at the same time maybe not giving them a ton of the screen time. So yeah, great use of the character, great use. Unfortunately, there's just one season I think is a little better about its use of Jay, so it has to go above Prime Empire, but I can't deny Prime Empire did a really good job at using Jay's character. Much like how Prime Empire was kind of predestined to be number 2, unfortunately, Skybound Season 6 kind of is predestined to be number 1 as the best use of Jay, because this was the first season that used Jay as its focus ninja, and I still think it's a little better than Prime Empire, where Jay's main use in Prime Empire comes in the later episodes. This season spreads Jay's use across the show entirely. This is the season where Jay finally starts to pursue his relationship with Nia officially, as they've kind of had some will they, won't they across the show. And then we get to season 5 where Jay has the vision of their future together. So Jay starts to have some kind of ideas about starting to try to make a relationship with Nia, even though Nia kind of starts to imply that she doesn't want a relationship with him because of her now trying to be independent as a ninja, which I do think is an interesting idea. And I love that they get to have a lot of great ideas alongside Nauticon, where Jay starts to believe that wishes are the only way he can get what he wants, which is kind of a very interesting idea to pursue as a plotline for a kid's show, which is interesting. I love that we get to learn about his past in this season, as we get to learn that he's adopted, which is interesting. He is the ninja who lasts the longest, as all the ninjas start to get slowly collected by Nauticon. He's the one who lasts the longest. He is the one who actually defeats Nauticon in the end. And in the end, he also is the one who gets to lead the ninja replacements in that one episode, which I like. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this season was kind of predestined to be the best season in terms of using Jay, because it's the first season that focused on him, and I think Jay's use across this season is a lot better than his focus in Prime Empire. So unfortunately, Skybound kind of has to rank number 1 place. But I will say this is much justified, because this is probably my favorite use of Jay across the whole series, is this entire season. So it does have to go at number 1. So there you guys have it. My ranking of all 21 Ninjago seasons based on the criteria of how each season uses Jay. If you guys want to take a stab at this list yourselves, let me know down in the comments. How would you rank the 21 Ninjago seasons based on how they use the character of Jay? And if that's a little too difficult for you, just give me what your top 3 would be and what your bottom 3 would be. But without further ado, thank you guys all very much for watching this video. I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.